outside, that would be nice. But our presentation is Nature Nurture, Strategies for Developing Critical Thinking, Social Emotional Learning, Academic Skills, and Health Benefits through Outdoor Play and Nature Exploration. And my name is Claudia Price, and I'm a preschool teacher at the Lilja Preschool. I've been in Natick about 24 years teaching preschool. Yeah.
And I'm Alli, and this is my classroom. I'm in the 4-day program, and I've been at the preschool for 6 years, and prior to that, teaching in other grades, but I also live in Natick. All right, so we just want to begin by having you think about some of your childhood memories outside, and what is a happy memory that comes to mind when you think of, your childhood. And for me, I grew up on the North Shore, so we spent a lot of time at the beach, and those are my kids. Oftentimes on Sundays, we would go to the beach and take a walk and look for sea glass and shells and collect them and count them and look at the different colors and shapes. And my kids love to grab their buckets and shovels and dig and pretend they're building dams to stop the water and all sorts of things. So that's just a special memory for me that still means a lot now.
And my happy place is I grew up in Pennsylvania and in Milltown outside of Pittsburgh, but my father had a hunting cabin in Cook's Forest, and we'd go up on every weekend. And then you can't see, but in this picture I'm a baby, so we started going when I was a baby, and we didn't have running water. We had to go to spring to get the running water, had a wood stove, and we basically got to be feral children. I mean, you just go up there, and it was great. We built forts, and my dad had a box trap that we could catch animals, so we'd see possums and groundhogs and porcupines and raccoons, and they'll release them, and then we had a salt lick to see deer, so it was really, really wonderful to be out in nature.
So does anybody have a memory that they want to share with the group? It's okay if you don't want to.
You can start, but you can just think. I bet if you think back, there's something outside either the beach or the forest or the mountains or whatever. Or maybe you want to have a memory, or you want your children to have one. So yeah, it's just something to get you thinking about it.
I mean, I grew up in Puerto Rico, so it's surrounded by water, and the beach is not very far, so you spend a lot of time there. So my intent is for my daughter to be able to have as many experiences outdoors as I did. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I feel like I was close to the beach, and here it takes a little bit longer, but we still go. Just have her play. So sometimes she's just playing in the dirt, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's always dug ponds.
Yeah.
So I listed here many different kinds of outdoor play that you might not even really think of. The first is dramatic play. So, this is a lot of pretend play, having little ice cream shops outside, or, my kids love to put on their hockey stuff and they pretend they're scuba diving off the structure in our yard, or even just, taking a stick and pretending you're fishing in the water and the rocks are little fish. Constructive play, which is, water, sand, mud, rocks, games with rules, so any organized sport, or just things that they come up with on their own, tag, things like that, which taps into the physical play, climbing rocks, also organized games, going on nature walks, planting, vegetables, fruit, things like that, flowers, snow play. We didn't have a ton of it this year, but and going on a scavenger hunt. And I'll show you some materials in a little bit. So there's all different kinds of outdoor play. There's lots of benefits to outdoor play. There's a lot of research behind the academic, critical thinking, social emotional, fine and gross motor, and health benefits. And I'm just going to go into them a little bit. So the first is academic benefits. It creates a high interest in learning for kids when they're outside. There's all sorts of math benefits. When they're outside, you can have them, collect rocks and count them, or you could sort, if you go apple picking, you could sort apples by different colors. You could, take leaves and look at the different prints through paint. and you could have, your child, they could jump like a grasshopper, and you can measure how far their jump was. There's all sorts of benefits academically. It helps them develop their vocabulary. So, in the springtime we do a unit on clouds, and we'll talk about the different kinds of clouds, the cumulus clouds, the stratus clouds, and it really exposes them to all sorts of vocabulary that they might not have learned if they weren't outside. And you can develop all sorts of themes, across the curriculum outside. So in the fall, you can talk about, apple picking and the season of fall. And in the spring right now, we're talking about signs of spring. So we go on a little nature walk, and I'll give you all this little handout. You could get a little clipboard or just have them go outside with the paper and pen. But I have copies for you, and the kids will go outside and they'll look for, signs of spring, sun, puddles, tree buds, flowers, grass, nests, all sorts of things like that. And then there's another handout that I have for you. If you wanted to go outside with your child, it just gives you different ideas, little prompts that you could give them, such as find something that you could make music with, or find something that could be used for counting, or find something you could sing about or write about, or something that makes you smile. So I'll give you that little handout if you'd like that. But the academic benefits basically, go on and on. I mean, you could look for spiders and have them talk about, what's the shape of a spider? How many legs does a spider have? And then there's critical thinking benefits. It really provides authentic experiences that are hands-on for kids to use their senses. So, when they go outside, what do you smell? What do you hear? It teaches them all about their senses and helps with their critical thinking skills and their creativity. So if you were going on a nature walk and you were through the woods, you could ask, could a bear live here? Where would it sleep? What would it eat? Getting them thinking outside of the box. And helps, with their understanding of music. I mean, you could have them find things that make music. You can have them drag a stick along a fence, tap sticks together, use a rock. Just really activates their critical thinking skills. If you were walking by, when you saw a little waterfall or some water, you could ask, how could you build a beaver dam, and talk all about, how does a beaver adapt to their environment, things like that. For social emotional learning, it really allows children to explore the world around them, and it may help with things like behavior challenges. Sometimes at home when your kid's having a complete meltdown, you just need a change of pace or a new environment, and just getting outside, giving them some fresh air can really just calm them right down. And it can help with executive functioning, gives them opportunities to make up games with their friends, figure things out, really practicing life skills on their own. It increases their independence. So if you are on a nature walk, hang back a little bit, let them be the leader, let them feel that they're leading the way, that they're independent, and eventually they'll feel more comfortable to go outside on their own. It also helps with social skills, taking turns. If you go outside with some spoons and you're mixing in the sand, they have to take turns with each other, brothers and sisters, other kids. And it really helps them just appreciate the natural world, and learning that little stones and sticks shouldn't be thrown away, but that this is part of nature and it should be kept in nature. And then there's lots of fine and gross motor benefits as well. When they're on playgrounds, it's helping with their strength, their balance. For fine motor, if you brought a little journal outside, you could bring one that's just blank, and they could draw things. Helps with their fine motor. You can have them illustrate a tree. All sorts of things. This is another example of a journal where they could write and just draw a picture there. But it can definitely increase their fine and gross motor skills. You can make up all sorts of games, like pretending some of the kids are fish and one of the child is a predator, and you don't want the predator to get the fish, and they have to run and find a rock to be safe. But the ideas are endless for fine and gross motor. And then there's health benefits as well. Research is showing that sunshine really makes people happier. So, why wouldn't we want happier children? Which also leads to greater motivation and interest in learning. The vitamin D is really important for their bone development. Less germs outside. And then, children who really grow up in the outdoors tend to become, adults who are more active, who like gardening, jogging, things outside, and obesity is a national crisis, so outdoor play can definitely help with that.
So one of the skills that helps children when they're in nature and outdoor is the social emotional learning. And social emotional learning has become very important in early childhood and childhood, so important that Mass State Education has started standards for teaching social emotional learning, because with everyone connected to digital learning, you're not getting that face-to-face contact. Children aren't learning these different skills. So I found this great article, and I'll just go over it briefly and I'll hand it out to you. And want to raise empathetic kids, try spending time in nature. And learning about and observing nature can contribute to your child's sense of empathy, because by connecting to nature, they're able to connect to people too. It helps them make connections and be aware. This is in the article. I'll just go real quick. Create an awareness of backyard wildlife, the robins, the squirrels in your backyard, the chipmunks. One of the things I do in class is we start out and let's see, I'm gonna give you a bird call. See if you can figure this. I think you might. Listen.
Woodpecker.
There you go. Good job. So we start with all the different ones, and we do introduce like one a month. And it's really great because, yes, you can get an app that has bird calls, but here they have it. They can play with it. They can make nests. They can make a habitat for it. They can feed it. They can talk about what they eat. And it's hands-on. For young children, hands-on, concrete activities are so important. So I start each day when they're on the rug and I want to get their attention, I put a bird behind my back behind the screen, and they can name all. It's so exciting. So once a month, I'm at the Lilja School, and behind Lilja is a lovely curated nature path that some of the older kids have done. There's signage and things like that, and it goes down to the water and all around. So once a month we do nature walks. So you're out there, you hear, they go, blue jay. It's so exciting, that they can identify these local birds. Help backyard wildlife. You can put bird feeders out, plant milkweed. Milkweed is the only habitat for monarchs. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've been raising monarchs from eggs from my garden, from milkweed in my garden, raising them, and then they get to see the whole metamorphosis, and then we tag them this year so that when they fly to Mexico, they can, when they find them in their overwintering place, they can collect the data. So the kids are part of that, and I got a grant. So next year, all the preschools will be raising monarchs and participating in that, all the preschool classes. Plan meaningful outdoor experiences. When you do it, you just start out with free play. The trick is, the thing is that kids just don't have unstructured time. So you don't have to really say, okay, we're going to study this, we're going to look for this. Just go for a walk and I spy something green, or I spy an insect. And I tell my kids, let's think like scientists. And what do scientists do? They ask questions. They make observations. They look carefully. They listen. They use their 5 senses. Okay, so here's some simple tips. Is from Audubon. Simple tips for taking your kids outside. It's things you can do. Okay, Natick resources, and I also wrote up a thing with all the different nature hikes, paths in Natick. All your backyard, Natick Town Forest, Natick Rail Trail, Middlesex Path, Pagan Cove, Broadmoor. There is a fee for Broadmoor. The Natick Organic Farm, you can walk around there. Behind there, there is a Eisenmeger Trail. It's behind Memorial School, and that's a lovely trail too. And then there's a nature path right behind the playground at Lilja School. That's, you can follow it very easy. It's a nice one, and that's the one we do. And I didn't put Duck Pond, which is another thing. At the Natick Organic Community Farm, they were having Shinrin Yoku, forest bathing for adults over 18 or 16, I think it was. And I did it. It's very hard to do because I'm not a calm, quiet person, you know, but you go and you sit and you just listen, you know, and then you walk and you somewhere else and you observe quietly. But it's nice, and I try to integrate that with my students too, you know. We do a little warm up first, we do a little meditation, and to heighten the senses. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How long would you say the average, like an average preschooler age child can you expect them to do something like that quietly, like a minute, like what's the
Oh yeah, I would not,
experience?
no. And what we do is, like when we do yoga, when we're done, we'll say, okay, let's go to our calm, quiet place. And by the end of the year, it's up to 5 minutes. But, you know, you close your eyes, and we already talk about pictures in your head of what your calm, happy place is, you know. So, but it starts at a minute, you know, you might even want to say 30 seconds, and then when you're done, doesn't that feel good? You know, everybody needs some downtime, yeah. So you could build up to it, yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, and the Wonder Bowl. So when you take these walks, wherever you might go, I have this in my class, and we call it the Wonder Bowl. And so if they see something interesting on the walk, they can bring it back. So I have a nest here, we have a daffodil, pine cones, some interesting rocks. Well, they almost look like geodes when you break them up, some dried flowers. So we do that, and so you don't need a fancy Wonder Bowl. You could have a plain plastic bowl, you could have a shoe box or something. And that way you bring it back, and then you have the child look at it and observe, what does it look like to you? Does it remind you of something? Does it remind you of something we've seen? You know, sticks sometimes or rocks can look like different shapes and stuff. What do you like about it? That kind of thing. So, okay. Okay, so this is kind of repeating what Alli said. This is more specific to nature. The one thing I wanted to call out is stops the vanishing freedom. You know, like I said, when I was growing up, we were feral children. Now it's a whole different ballgame. You know, both parents are working a lot of the times, and it's hard to have unsupervised play. Everything is pretty much structured in that. So, but one thing when you take your walks, and a lot of people aren't nature people, and that's fine. But what you want to do is you don't want to instill your fear of bugs or spiders or snakes, whatever it might be, and everybody has them, to the children. So when we take our walks, instead of saying, okay, be careful, let's be careful where you're walking, that instills fear. Instead, we say, pay attention. Pay attention activates the senses, and that promotes confidence. And that's the senses are any animal's first line of defense. If your senses are activated, you're going to do okay. And like I said, that's good for if it's a 4-year-old or a 14-year-old. Pay attention, you know. And instead of instilling fear, it gives confidence. And some of the other reduced stress, they find children that are in green spaces and schools that have green spaces and whatever, their stress is reduced and increased to academic performance. Self-confidence, and all. So I think that's, Alli pretty much covered all the rest, but yes, okay. Yep, okay, so talking about all these things about observation skills, pay attention, we took a walk, we went on a walk, probably our third walk, we did it once a month, and one of the kids came and said, Mrs. Price, look. And so I want you to see and tell me if anybody wants to volunteer, and so tell me what you see in this photo. Yeah.
A bird.
And isn't it camouflage?
Yeah.
Unbelievably. I could not believe the child found it. Can you see? Any guesses?
Yeah, she got it.
Ear.
Yeah.
Ear.
That's partially right. Part of a bunny. It's just a bunny head.
Ear.
It looks like it's a bunny in a hole, right?
Oh my god.
Okay, this is, yes. Okay, so we had talked, we have a pet guinea pig in class, and we talked about the difference between wild animals and pets. Pets, people have to take care of them. They're responsible for their food, their shelter, their water. Wild animals, guess what? They take care of themselves. They don't get their food from a can, they don't get their food from a bag. They have to get their own food. So 15 children in my class, 2 were kind of like a little afraid, maybe 4 were grossed out, just said gross, ew, ew, and the others were like, whoa, what happened? The inquiry science, that's what a scientist does. That's why, wow, what happened? Is that its head? Where's its body? So we started saying, what do you think happened? An animal killed it. Why do you think it killed it? And we got to that's their source of food. So do you think it was a bunny that killed it? No, what kind of animal? And we talk about what wild animals eat and whatever. So there are big hawks, there are owls in right around where we are, horned owls, and they could have been could have been a coyote. About a month before, we found coyote scat on a path, so it could be a coyote. So the children understand, even like when we're talking about animals like penguins, they eat fish, or polar bears eat seals. They understand, they get an understanding of wildlife. So they were fascinated with it. It was the talk of lunch and snacking for days afterwards. And as my husband said, that'll probably be the one thing they remember from preschool. But what confidence it gives them to come upon this and have an explanation for it. They can think like scientists and objectively say, and empathy. The poor bunny, but yeah, that's, whatever the owl had to get it for its food, that kind of thing. So this is what being in nature, again, that's the random hit. You get that dopamine hit because, wow, this is exciting. This is more exciting than any video game or, like this. And onto that. So here's a man walking in nature. Nature is nice, but I wish I could take a quiz to find out what kind of donut I am. Like all the quizzes on Facebook, what kind of animal are you? And that's what we're competing against. We're competing against that when instead of children walking and making discoveries and to be online and doing these random quizzes that mean nothing and that are given that little dopamine hit, but it's much better to get it from nature. So average elementary child spends 4 to 7 minutes free time, unstructured time outdoors, 4 to 7 hours screen time. So that's food for thought there. Okay.
Yeah. A week of that? Is that it couldn't be a week.
No, it's a day.
That's
a day. All right. So the technology in children, there's a wonderful book called
The Importance of Being Little.
And they talk about all the things that young children need, concrete experiences, and their early childhood technology. Let your child experience drive the technology, not technology drive the experience. So even though, we had the experience of the monarchs and whatever, after we were done, I showed them a video of the monarchs overwintering in Mexico. So I showed that screen, and you could hear, there were so many, millions and millions, you could hear them, the flapping, and they thought they were bees because you could hear all the noise of the wings. So that was it. We used a Codapillar, which is a little electronic toy that teaches coding. You could adapt, because we had studied the caterpillars and whatever, and that's how we introduced that technology, because we related it to nature. We talk about how different inventions are related to nature, like Velcro was from, does anybody know where Velcro was, the inspiration? A Swiss man was walking, and those spurs were on it, and he looked at it and saw the little hooks, and that's what inspired him. So I try to do any technology, I try to connect it with nature.
And technology is really, at this age, meant to help them, make things easier, and it doesn't have to be, an iPad. So just some little things that you could do at home. You could certainly buy, real plastic binoculars, but if you wanted to have your child tap into the arts as well. You could get little toilet paper rolls and a piece of yarn and string it together, punch little holes, and there you go. You've got your binoculars. They can take these on a nature walk, you know, and just, again, using their five senses, you know, what do you see, what do you hear? And then I showed you the little journals, and then they could also, you know, again, you can buy these or you could make little magnifying glasses, and, you know, it helps them feel like explorers and scientists.
And even if you didn't have glass in them, you just had a cardboard circle, it just helps them to focus on something, you know. And even a magnifying might be distracting. Which way? You know, even if you just have a circle like that, it helps them to focus, zero in on details.
And, you know, my kids have these little, like, explorer vests. They put their tools in, but if you didn't have a vest, you could take a paper bag, you know, cut out 2 little holes and split up the middle, and they could decorate the bag with leaves and try to camouflage in the leaves, or, you know, just put on their vest, again, feel like an explorer. And then, you know, similar to what Claudia has here, is just some animals with little sounds. They could take these out to play with them, you know, little frogs, all sorts of things that, you know, they could take to play. And, and then I had one other handout I wanted to show you too. It's just a handout of different kinds of tracks. So, you know, in the wintertime when it snows, we'll go out and we'll look for different kinds of tracks. And this is something you could just take in your backyard and say, oh, you know, do they match the picture? Or what kind of tracks do you think? What kind of animal made those tracks? Where do you think they're going? How do you think they got here? And there's just lots of ways you can develop, you know, their thinking skills. So I just want to end with a few quotes. The first is, children are happier, healthier, and well-adjusted when connecting with nature. Children are more likely to remember what they learned because it is concrete and meaningful to them. The best preparation for adulthood is to have a full and enjoyable childhood. Thus, childhood must include outdoor play. And what challenges are keeping you from outdoor nature experiences with your own child? So I just wanted to ask that question at the end. You know, what is it that's, I guess, hard to, you know, find to get outside, you know, with your child or for your child?
Yeah, I have a challenge, and that is that we spent a good amount of time going to a local park that is close to a school, so she knows the exact way to get there. And it's really hard to take any other direction because she knows where that specific park is. So we're trying to go a different way and take a new path. So the only way I can get her to do that is if I get her in a car and I go physically to a different place. Otherwise, she will not want to go unless it's to that specific place. So I don't know if, you know, if there's another way to change the exploration, because it's always the same path to the same place.
So do you want to go to a different park or a different way to get to the park?
A different way, a different location. She just knows that specific park.
Oh, so
nearby.
So a different park you want to go to? Or,
Yeah.
So then what you could do is maybe you could drive to the different park and say, oh, can you know, help mommy look out the window and let's see how we get to this park, and drive a couple times. Oh, I'd really like to walk because it's such good exercise. You know, so maybe let her see it, and maybe you can say, what do you see along the way? So if you see a store or you see a pink house or whatever, some landmarks, okay, let's remember that. And then you could try to work in the walk that way. Yeah, just let her get, because I have a horrible sense of direction, so I usually do that too. So I understand her pain there. But I think that might be a way of easing into it, so she gets familiar with another way by car, and ask her to look for landmarks, and then you can help mommy, you know, get there.
Winter was really odd with like weather. Like I don't have a problem being out in the snow and stuff, but I feel like there were like these stretches of just like impossible temperatures.
Ice
like,
cold
no
rain,
snow.
yeah.
I feel like that is our biggest
Yeah,
challenge. Like we'll put on like rain boots and a raincoat and go out in the rain and like no problem, or like snow gear when it's warm enough. But I feel like, you know, where we live, that's sort of.
So one of the things that we do in the classroom, and I do at home, is actually just bring the snow in.
Yeah.
So you can bring the snow in a bin, we put it in our sensory table, and we'll bring like, you know, little animals, penguins, polar bears, and they play with it. And just, you know, you can even put like food coloring in it and see what happens with that. But it it's definitely tricky with the cold temperatures. But just trying to bring a piece of nature in. But you can have them, even go out. You could even go out, without them if it was too cold for a few minutes and try to gather stuff to bring in, like the Wonder Bowl or.
Well, I was thinking even like keeping some of that throughout the year, then when it's too cold to go outside,
Yeah.
you go
Right.
back and look at it. Yeah. It's really good. Yeah. Where do you get those little garden birds? Sorry.
She wants to know where you get the bird.
Oh, yes, and I put on the Natick resources, I have the website, but, and they're from Cornell School of Ornithology, so it's really, so they're bona fide. I got some at the Natick Outdoor Store, they have them. And I mostly want to get more local ones, I belong to Appalachian Mountain Club, and one time at one of the stores there, I found a couple. But I put the website to get them, and they do have them at the outdoor store, Natick Outdoor Store. I just also wanted, this is a lovely book, Wonderful Nature, Wonderful You, talking about the social, emotional learning. And, they have different things. They talk about death, that kind of thing, so it's easy. And this one they're talking about fish don't try to grow feathers because birds have them. Tigers have stripes, leopards have spots. Each is special, none of them is different. This is just as simple. There will always be people who can do things you can't or have things you don't. You have your own special gifts. What do you think they are? So throughout this book, I just love it. It connects nature to children and social emotional skills. And then this is a book, if you want to read up on, they have this at the Natick Library. You could get Last Child in the Woods, and it's about saving our children from nature deficit disorder, basically. Kids just aren't getting out. That 4 to 7 minutes is proof of that. And this is for you to read and I find it a very good read, interesting read. So, all right.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, so one of my challenges, and I don't know if this is just common with other parents or if I'm just like super anxious, we obviously go outside, but we live in our part of our area is very, woodsy, we're near like the conservation lands, and I am terrified of ticks. And so that's like enough, like I let them play, but I'm like, oh, I don't want, don't go too far back, because I don't know much about ticks, but I constantly worry about that. So I let that fear get in my head, and I feel like it limits to, kind of what I allow my kids to do outside. Like I kind of have them on like a, like in a perimeter, like you can play there and there.
So they could be there and get a tick from
I know,
there,
yeah.
And all you can do is you can get the little cards, the tick identification thing, but all you can do is check them when they come in and have them, wear socks and whatever, and depending on the weather. But you just do a check and say that's part of being outside, and let's just check,
Yeah, I don't
see
want
if
to
you
instill
can-
that fear in them, because I'm like so weird about it that I don't want to feed it, off into them.
So you're going to pay attention.
Yes.
You're just going to pay attention rather than be careful. Pay attention, And let's pay attention, see if you have any. Yeah. But it is. Like I said, people are afraid of snakes. Some spiders and things like that. But you just don't want to pass